It is a way to justify Israel's actions against the healthcare infrastructure of Gaza. Okay? Anyone that even remotely entertains this nonsensical fucking bullshit, anyone that entertains this bullshit is doing propaganda for Israel, whether they recognize it or not. Let's see what the White House had to say about the thing that I covered yesterday, by the way. Speaking of Israel, it came out that Israel had assassinated 15 Red Crescent workers and first responders in Gaza, and then hid those murders in a mass grave, including the ambulances that they struck. We found out about this. The New York Times itself reporting on this was such an abdication of duty that I find it to be criminal negligence, by the way. They reported on the matter and said, hold on, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, IDF buried the ambulances, chat. Burying the ambulances themselves along with the medics they executed is one of the elements that makes this latest crime so extraordinary and also revealing. A group of IDF soldiers collectively agreed to use a bulldozer to bury the ambulances in the sand with the men they had just killed on the apparent hope that nobody would notice 15 men were missing. Consider how far down the path of dehumanization you have to be to get there. That's what they did. Yes, they buried the ambulances that they blew up, chatters. We watched them do excavation and find the ambulances buried under the sand. Yes, the entire ambulances that they blew up, they buried those ambulances alongside the first responders they killed, that they assassinated. I need you to understand something. Red Crescent engages in deconfliction, which means that every move that Red Crescent takes in the Gaza Strip is done with the knowledge of Israel. They don't go anywhere without informing the Israeli authorities when they're in the Gaza Strip, which means that the Israeli authorities knew exactly where these ambulances were going and still assassinated them, just like they did to the World Central Kitchen aid workers, as a matter of fact. Most moral army on the planet. Mohammed Al-Safin says the UN filmed a video at the site showing the bodies of the medics in their uniforms being dug out of a grave under their crushed ambulances, Radio Rwanda-ass newspaper. The reason why Muhammad is saying this is because, speaking of burying, the New York Times buried the fucking lead on the only coverage that they did at the time, yesterday, on the Gaza medics. Here's how they reported on it. And this is also like further down in the article in and of itself. On Sunday, the Palestine Red Crescent Society said it recovered the bodies of 8 emergency medical technicians, 5 civil defense personnel, and a United Nations employee in Rafah in southern Gaza. The medical organization said it had lost contact with 9 of its crew members more than a week ago after they were directly fired upon by Israeli forces. The Israeli military said in a statement late Sunday that its forces had opened fire on March 23rd at several vehicles that had been advancing suspiciously towards the troops without headlights or emergency signals and without prior coordination. The military added that an initial assessment had determined that the forces had eliminated a Hamas operative and 8 other terrorists without explaining any connection to the emergency and rescue crew members who were killed. The Times could not independently verify the claims of either side. They wrote the Israeli claims, okay? They wrote the Israeli claims, and they did not write the claims of the Red Crescent. Now, or the UN, mind you. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is the New York Times. It is the paper of record. Do you think that the New York Times does not have the phone number of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society or the United Nations? Do you think that the New York Times simply could not find this information? You think they couldn't just call up a journalist at the New York Times? They have like 4,000 of them. Not a single one of them could call up the United Nations or the Palestine Red Crescent Society? Red Cross in Palestine or in the Muslim, okay? Just so you understand, that's what it is. They just could not dial them up. They could not independently verify these claims. They could not look at the video footage of the excavated ambulances. Insane. This is not incompetence. This is not negligence. This is actively omitting key information from your coverage in an effort to shelter the public from the truth. The New York Times has moved beyond being stenographers of the State Department to be stenographers for the Israeli occupying force. They do this in a way where even Israeli outlets don't do this. Like Haaretz is more critical of Israel's than the New York Times is. It's insane. If there was any sort of real justice, some of these journalists would be tried in the same way that the press were tried at the Nuremberg trials. Straight up. This is collaboration to the highest degree. This is crazy. It is mind-boggling to me that they've just kept doing this, that they just refuse to do their job at a time when journalism is the most necessary. Good journalism is an absolute necessity. They're doing everything they can to shelter the public from the truth. The truth that Israel is doing a genocide, and the truth that Israel will stop at nothing to complete its exterminationist policies in the Gaza Strip, and then also in the West Bank. Oh my God. It's horrifying, man. It is truly, truly horrifying shit. Here's how the White House responded to the reported killing of rescue workers in Gaza.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah.
In Gaza, the bodies of 15 rescuers have been found in their sort of ambulances where they were apparently horses. Just wondering if the White House is going to be calling on Israel to investigate that and to try and avoid similar casualties involving rescue workers in the future.
Well, as for the specific situation you just mentioned, I'll talk to the president about it and our national security team. What I can tell you is what I've spoken with the president on. He very much remains committed to backing Israel, and it was only because of this president and his team's leadership that we had a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, that we were able to bring many hostages home. And the president made it very clear to Hamas, you get the hostages out, all of them, or there will be help.
You didn't answer the question at all.
President Trump's tariff.
Anyway. This is why I don't hate the tariffs as much, where I'm like, we do deserve punishment. You know what I mean? As a society, we deserve it a little bit, okay? We do deserve Donald Trump a little bit. You know who doesn't deserve the pain that Donald Trump brings on them, though? The Palestinians. They don't deserve it. They're getting it anyway. Israel eliminates all tariffs on U.S. goods. Things are getting worse and worse at an alarming rate all around the world, dude. It is crazy. Here's the State Department spokesperson on the Israeli military summarily executing one by one 15 aid workers from the Red Crescent, UN, and local first responders in Gaza. Yeah. By the way, I want to repeat something that I hope people are aware of, but this answer to this question is identical to the State Department procedures when Biden was in charge. Make no mistake.
The UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office has said that 15 paramedics, civil defense, and a UN worker were killed, in their words, one by one by the IDF. They have dug bodies up, they said, in a shallow grave that have been gathered up, and also vehicles in the sand. Have you got any assessment of what might have happened, and given the potential use of American weapons, is there any assessment of whether or not this complied with international law?
Well, I can tell you that for too long, Hamas has abused civilian infrastructure, cynically using it to shield themselves. Hamas's actions have caused humanitarians to be caught in the crossfire.
This is no different than Matt Miller, Kirby, Anthony Blinken, or even all the way down to like the lowest level of doing Hasbara, someone like Ethan Klein saying Hamas is putting command and control centers under Israeli hospitals. It is a way to justify Israel's actions against the healthcare infrastructure of Gaza. Okay? Anyone that even remotely entertains this nonsensical fucking bullshit, anyone that entertains this bullshit is doing propaganda for Israel. Whether they recognize it or not, it does not matter. Okay?
The use of civilians or civilian objects to shield or impede military operations is itself a violation of international humanitarian law. And of course, we expect all parties on the ground to comply with international humanitarian law.
But this is specifically a question on any, it's a question about accounting and accountability, given that it may have been the use of US weapons. So it's a question about the State Department rather than Hamas. Is there any action to
Well,
assess?
every single thing that is happening in Gaza is happening because of Hamas. Every single dynamic. I'll say again, I've said it, I think, in every briefing.
Yeah. Here's Matt Miller under the glorious Brandon liberal regime saying the exact same thing. Erekat persisted with his line of questioning. Why is it so difficult for this government to say we condemn the killing of children, Palestinian women and children, he asked. That earned him a reproach from Miller. Whenever you ask me these kinds of questions, I do think you continue to kind of just elide over the fact that Hamas bears a great deal of responsibility for putting those children in harm's way, the State Department spokesman said. Remember, it was Hamas that launched this war in the first place with an attack on Israel that killed men, women, and children, and that Hamas that hid and continues to hide behind children as human shields, Miller added. In order to construct a narrative such as this one, you have to avoid so many glaringly obvious fucking truths, which is that Israel's not doing a genocide, even though it is, right? Which is that Israel just has no other option but to bomb the children, even though it is a fucking war crime to bomb hospitals. It's insane. Here's the Israeli ambassador and Biden advisor clashing over Gaza war legacy. Israeli ambassador Yechiel Leiter had a tense exchange with Brett McGurk. You might remember him, former President Biden's top Middle East advisor, after Leiter condemned the Biden administration's Gaza policy in a closed-door briefing at the Atlantic Council last week, according to 4 American and Israeli sources who attended the meeting. Brett McGurk said, "What the fuck are you talking about? We let you do a genocide, and you're still shitting on us." Do you understand? The sources noted that Leiter even claimed all the Biden administration wanted to discuss with Israel was a number of aid trucks entering Gaza. McGurk was in the audience, and he asked the opportunity to comment after Leiter ended his presentation. "I want to make sure the ambassador knows all the details about what the Biden admin did for Israel since October 7, McGurk told Leiter, according to sources who were in the room. McGurk then detailed many steps Biden took, like traveling to Israel, sending aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter Hezbollah and Iran, giving $13 billion in military assistance, using emergency procedures to ensure the delivery of weapons, helping defeat 2 Iranian missile attacks, and blocking anti-Israeli measures in the UN. Look how honest Brett McGurk is. Remember that. Brett McGurk is speaking for the Biden administration here, and all of the wonderful actions the Biden administration took. After McGurk's pushback, Leiter said he stands corrected, but thanked McGurk personally, but not the Biden administration as a whole, the sources said. Here he is, brutally honest about all the things that they did for Israel. So remember that whenever fucking dumb fucks in the chat go, "Oh, the Biden administration wouldn't do this." Like, what are you talking about? They did do this. They did it. They did it, and they were so horny to continue doing it that they lost the election to a fucking fascist. What do you mean? And this is just the sum of the many things that they did, by the way. This is just like the tip of the iceberg, I guess. So remember that whenever someone tries to tell you like, "Oh, it's totally different. It's totally different."